Hello, my name is Tania León. I'm founder and artistic director of Composers Now. Can you imagine meeting the person that created a song that you adore? Can you imagine meeting the painter that actually is the one that created a canvas that you have passion for? Can you imagine meeting a writer and having a conversation with? This is exactly what we're going to do now. Dialogues is a program that it's the first time that we are going to have a virtual stage to offer to you works by 3 incredible composers. Those composers are John King, Nicole Mitchell, and ANDREIA PINTO CORREIA. The way that Dialogues, which is actually the title of our program, works is that we have inspiring performances of the works by these 3 composers, followed by a meeting among all of us to explore a theme that is prevalent in our society nowadays. And that is the impact of the arts in our society. In that forum, we will be able to converse with you, the audience, the composers, the performers. I would like for you to be inspired in whichever way you want to, as you embrace new sounds, perhaps for you, or perhaps sounds that you know, and get to be really, really personal with these 3 creators that you might find later in the streets of the nation. And you will feel that you know them and they know you. And the conversation that we will actually have today will continue at that moment for years to come. So I just invite you to also look at the program. The program is on our website. So it's the program for tonight, where you will have the pieces and the performers. And then later on, after the 3 pieces, in that order, John King, his work, Nicole Mitchell, her work, and then ANDREIA PINTO CORREIA, her work, then we are going to actually gather and have that exchange of ideas that perhaps you will be very inspired to discuss based on the theme of the impact of the arts in our society. So until then, enjoy the performances, and I see you later. That was extraordinary. My goodness. Well, as promised, we're going to move into the next phase of dialogues. And the next phase is a dialogue with the audience. I hope that you have posed some questions and some thoughts about the impact of the arts in our society. And all of these composers, all of these performers, you have witnessed what the imagination of these composers have been and the imagination of these performers in rendering their sounds. So without further ado, I would like to invite all of the composers and all of the performers to start a dialogue that we would like to have with you and get your impressions and get your thoughts specifically about the impact that these artists are making as a contribution to the world. So, is everybody here? Hey, Nicole, Andrea, where's John? George, Pauline and Conrad. Hello. Everybody here?
I'm here, but my video is currently disabled, but I'll get it fixed very shortly. Fixed.
Okay, fantastic. And Pauline and Conrad?
Hello.
Hi. Maybe John will be around shortly.
I'm here.
Oh, fantastic. So we all are here. Great.
Yes.
So is there a possibility then to start this conversation? I have no idea if anybody have already posed any questions, but as you know, we like to explore the thoughts that have to do with the impact of what you're doing or your contribution to the arts and the impact to our society. So if any of you would like to jump in there and let's have a lively dialogue about these possibilities and exchanging of ideas that might be inspiring to those that are listening to us at this time.
I can go first. Hello, hola, ¿qué tal?
¿Qué pasa?
¿Qué pasa? So I'm just going to make a little bit of a bridge between what you just heard. So George, which, as you could see, is an extraordinary performer. The piece that he performed, the name is Cadernos, which means notebooks. And the three movements that you heard, the first one is called Footsteps, the second one, Stories, and the third one, Freedom. And the relation to what you just said is because this piece is inspired by Dostoevsky's Notebooks from the House of the Dead. And I don't know of those who are familiar with that book. Dostoevsky wrote that book some years after he experienced prison in Siberia. And some of his I'll say remembrances and experiences in prison were then somehow in a semi-fictional way put into this book, which tells the narration of Alexandra Petrovich in the prison. So it starts, the footsteps, the first movement is the circular motion, which regards the footsteps of the prisoners in the patio of the prison. So there's this kind of claustrophobic cycle. And then you have different stories in the second movement, and finally Freedom, which has to do with the liberation of an eagle that had a broken wing and then flies away. And I'm telling you this story not only for you to understand the narration of the piece, but also it has to do with what you just mentioned, which is, you know, Alexander Petrovich, he found liberation in jail through writing, through his notes, through his impressions, and all that claustrophobia and all that, you know, intense pain and grief that he was feeling in prison was somehow put into his notes that became this fictional work. And he is, of course, a character in a character in this book, but he found consolation and liberation into writing. And I think for us composers, perhaps is a little bit like that during these times. I cannot compare myself as somebody that is in Siberia in prison, obviously, but during these times, just the sense that we can get from our daily input and work, and it's perhaps a little bit of that type of consolation and attaining a certain type of freedom and liberation.
I'd just like to tag on to, since we're talking about Andrea's piece, I've known Andrea for a long time, and the wonderful thing about this piece for me and being able to share this music with an audience is that not only have I gotten to know this Dostoevsky novel through Andrea and her inspiration for this piece, but I've gotten to know Andrea's music and her inspirations throughout many works. And it's fascinating for me to see how those two meet and create new art and new music. And something that's, while it's inspired by Dostoevsky, it has Andrea's Portuguese flair in it, and it has her sense of harmony and the things that she does and that are so unique, and what she brings to that. It's wonderful to be transported. I myself am transported, especially in a time where we're not really allowed to travel and we're kind of stuck in the room by ourselves, but I'm able to be transported, and hopefully others are, kind of around the world through Russian literature and through this amazing Portuguese background that Andrea has, but also incredible sense of jazz that Andrea has and knows thoroughly, and on the vibraphone, which is also kind of a unique instrument. So it kind of is this wonderful blend of different things that I love to share with people, and hopefully it brings them somewhere new, somewhere they haven't been before.
Is this piece anything that you may think, you know, once we have heard Andrea's imagination put into sounds and your interpretation, and you probably knew what she was intending to do, how this would relate to our times, for example?
Well, for me, I think the fact that it's rooted and it begins with kind of the idea of a political prisoner, you know, Dostoevsky, and this intense solitude and despair. I mean, not only do we have a lot of current events going on that make us question freedom in general and make us realize that it's maybe somewhat of a delicate thing, but also we've all been through this experience of solitude, and how do we find the other side of these quarantines, these times? And I think the inner turmoil and struggle of the first movement, these footsteps, the claustrophobic circular thing, maybe walking around your apartment, not allowed to leave it. And then this kind of battle that happens in the second movement with a few different storylines going on in the chromaticism. For me, almost, I'm not putting any words in Andrea's mouth, but magical realism in a way. In at least it sounds that way to me in the second movement. And then we arrive at this, you know, this liberation, this enlightenment, this opening up of sun and light coming in by the third movement. And I think hopefully it gives people maybe who are stuck inside and maybe have lost a little bit of hope for when this thing's ever going to end, a reinforcement and a reminder through the ages, through 19th century Russian literature and Andrea's current piece. We humans have been trying to find the ins and outs of experiences like these for a long time. This isn't the first time we've been through it, but we can figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Anybody that would like to jump in with that thought and actually go to the impact of these sounds or these pieces for those that listen to it and how we can relate to it. You know, we all embrace sound in our own very individual way. So for us, it might mean something totally different. It might be something that we are struggling, you know, internally. I mean, it's reflective. Whether we know what the story behind the piece or not is, you know, sound elicits the body, you know, to have sensations. And therefore, you know, our mind and our heart, everything gets involved. Everybody, yeah.
I just wanted to maybe say that thinking of the sounds of quarantine and what it was like to be in isolation and in pause in New York City, all the familiar sounds of the city no longer being that everyday familiarity and becoming a foreign thing, but something new that has always been here, the sounds of birds, bird songs, just a different energy in the air. And what was it? I'm trying to remember what it was, but oh, water. Apparently, a molecule of water is something that has traveled through space. It's something that has existed for many, many years. So water that we have on this earth is not something new. It's something that's pre-existed our time. And I think about how we relate to sounds and associate sounds and the impact of what that means, and how when sound is organized into music, how that connects and how that, you know, activates memory or distance or whatever it is. I thought during quarantine, I noticed a lot of that, just a different energy, vibrations, and the interesting connection between history through story and the current with music and connecting us as humans. So that's all.
What about you, Conrad? Nothing to say?
Well, I'd have to move on. I mean, I love the piece. I was just, in my mind, I was still thinking of John's piece. So I was thinking of, I don't want to jump around, but I was thinking about how his piece, there's all this kind of extra noise also around it. You're kind of, part of the piece is you're struggling in a way. You're reaching these triads, and with two harmonics usually, or two open strings, and you're playing the three at the same time, and all these other little harmonies and textures and timbres kind of leap out while you're doing that. So there's all this other stuff going on, and it's very atmospheric as well, I think. Mm-hmm. So that was what I was thinking of.
What do you think? I mean, for example, using this work and the voice of the composers that we are performing, I really want to get into the impact that this may create on those that might not know these composers, but they hear the music. And some of us have the impetus to know who wrote this, who did this, you know? And if we have the chance, as I said at the beginning, imagine if we can actually talk to our favorite writer, to our favorite composer, to our favorite choreographer. Yeah? So what do you think that we're doing in a way?
Well, I just loved the intensity of John's piece. I think it really connects to the way things are right now. There's just so much going on that I don't think anyone can doubt that there's a lot of, whether you want to call it chaos or turmoil or whatever you want to call it, is a lot of it going on. And yet the piece also has a spiritual energy. So I was curious hearing from John, like how you were thinking of it and how you chose this for this specific performance and in relation to what's going on, and also what you thought about in terms of the roles of the two string players and how they related to each other in contrasting roles where listening, I think the idea of listening is being challenged. So I'm curious about that.
Well, thank you, Nicole. The piece was actually written with the idea that the two players might not be in the same space together because of what we're going through. And I was thinking of how could that be a challenge, not not something that's detrimental, or I thought, what's that? How could that be inspiring? And so I put this piece together where the two of them really make a lot of their own choices. They're moving through the material on their own, but the idea is that they slowly, centripetal light means light that comes together, that coalesces, that is drawn together, I guess, ultimately into a sort of a black hole or some, concentration of light. And so I was just thinking of having them begin in this very ethereal, transparent place that they choose. And as Conrad pointed out, the little sparkles come through in different ways from each of the players. But then with the addition of a rhythm, with the addition of amplitude, with the addition of intensity, they kind of try to come together, and they overlap, and they go back to ethereal, and they finally end with what I wanted to be, just the most intense high level tremolos that kind of brought these two voices together. So it was a lot about freedom. It was a lot about finding each of their individual ways to that place. I think they did a fantastic job. And to you, Nicole, I was thinking, it was so beautiful. You were in this outside space, and the pianist was on this inside space, and it seemed very separate, and you both had this very kind of fluid way of improvising, and then you came together in these really, really beautiful ways, and then you'd sort of drift apart again and then come together, whether it was rhythmic or textural, or and I was just really curious about how that worked with the score.
Well, it can be done a lot of different ways, because I have the amazing Cory Smythe that, he had a lot of room for improvisation, and so it was more of a map where, like you said, there were places that come together. The flute part is always intended to be pre-recorded, and so it's meant to be like a solo piano piece where there's pivot points where the musician knows where things are connecting, but it's very loose, because I've done those flute and tape pieces where you have to line up with total precision, and it's annoying to me. So I didn't want it to be that type of piece. I wanted it to be more, to breathe more. But if someone does not improvise, there's enough there for the pianist to do the piece completely written out. So I've done it both ways. And yeah, this is all done before all of this online Zoom action has been going on. So I was playing with the idea of interdimensional communication, maybe communicating with the spirit world, or from another planet, and being able to be in real time. So that was the idea that I was playing with, and we actually in this space actually now it seems a normal thing, because of what's going on. But it also makes the piece work really well for this situation because of that, because it was intended for that specifically. And maybe Cory, you could talk about navigating my really strange score if you want.
Well, it's a beautiful score, and yeah, strange in a beautiful way. But like you said, there's plenty of information on the page that if you play strictly what's there, I think it's a really compelling piece, and I was grateful to be able to sort of treat it more liberally and improvise more with the materials that were on the page and in the recording. And I would like to have been improvising with the visuals and taking my piano out to a beautiful desert scape, but that sadly is not possible. I'm curious, I never talked to you about where is that video taking place, Nicole?
It's in Irvine. So it's springtime in Irvine. There are some spaces that are undeveloped. So, well, I shouldn't say undeveloped. That's what they call it, but naturally developed. And it was spring, so all the flowers were coming out, and just playing with that idea of identity between, like, we have our business that we take care of, and then you have your private self, which is more close to your spirit and maybe also closer to your ancestral connections. So I was making some juxtapositions with those, and also just trying to have fun with all of the I like to celebrate nature in a lot of my work. So it was a really nice space to play with. And I had, the main videographer, Chantel, is just like she has an amazing eye. And I asked her to, like, put these webs and fabrics over the lens, because I didn't want it to be so straightforward. Like, how do we really understand each other? We're focused on visuals so much. So I was trying to evade the camera in a lot of ways. And then, ultimately I was captured by the camera. So I like a few mini narratives going on with that.
I would like to actually go back to the focus of the impact. How do you think, as composers and performers, that you are exercising an impact right now? Friends, relatives, students, the community, specifically because we don't see each other now. And we are constantly distant. We are not on stage. We cannot reach with our energy those audiences that might be sitting there, or the audience members that know us, that might waiting for us at the end of the performance, or those friends with which we might gather after a performance to celebrate a premiere, to celebrate the second or the 10th time of a piece is performed. So what do you think, that you are contributing at this time? And I don't want that to be a loaded question, but I think that, since all of these sounds come out of not only your imagination, but, they come out of your heart. It's a form of expression, where you're expressing yourself in sound. So how do you think that this is actually something that might be helping each other and the community at large?
I think us all just being here and continuing to do our work and being creative and figuring out how to work Zoom and figuring out how to work with somebody who's across town or across the country or on the other side of the ocean, just showing that even in these very difficult times, we're doing our work, we're continuing to be creative, and we're, hopefully getting it out to people that can see it and enjoy it. And not only that in itself, but what we're all going through, what we're all doing. We're all showing up here and doing something, and not letting anything stop us, in a way. That's what I think our impact is.
Mm-hmm. Any other thoughts?
I like the idea of, I'm always trying to think of transporting people, taking them from their captive space, and as cozy as we can make it at home, the inability to go to the concert hall, the inability to travel for a lot of us, travel further than the block or the grocery store, trying to give people and connect with people by, saying, hey, come to this sound world with me, this alternate dimension, and let's share that space for a while, and reflect on it, and then have a conversation about it afterward, which we can still do in this space. So that for me is, that's the thing I love most about what I do in normal times when people are there in the concert hall. But now, even still trying to, make people forget they're on their couch and there are dirty dishes over there and whatever for 10 minutes. And then the piece is over and they go, oh, I forgot. I'm here in my apartment still. Giving them somewhere to travel to.
Mm-hmm. Anyone else?
Yes, hola. So first of all, I love the piece of John King and Nicole Mitchell. It is so nice to meet you both and your performers. I didn't say this before, but it's such a pleasure to meet you. I have to add something. I think Tanya probably understand this. I don't know, being from another country, this was the first time in my life that I could not travel to my country. I know Tanya experienced this for many years, but for me, it was the first time that I was in a situation that I could not travel for a period of 6 months. I knew I could not get in a plane and get back to Portugal if I wanted. And that gave me a great sense of displacement. And that made me feel very uncomfortable and trying to figure out really where my place was in the world. And I have to say that with George, as George said, we go back many, many years. I met George, we were both still as students when we met about 12 years ago, probably. And this piece is been there almost from the beginning. I wrote this piece, I was still a student then. I was in a period transition between jazz orchestra and classical. And George was there and he's been playing this piece since then. And both we've been growing, me as a composer, him as a performer. We've been there for each other. He's been performing my music since then. I've been audience member for him since then. And that's very important for me in this moment where there's a great sense of displacement. To have those relationships with your performers, the performers that perform your music, that become your friends in your life, and and for me to have that a George in my life is extraordinary, and is very special for a composer to have that because without George and without Cory and Nicole and all these performers, the composer is just for me, I'm not a performer anymore, just notes on a page. We need these vessels, you need to to have this voyage through the performer so it can be heard. And that was very important at this point in my life to have these performers that are incredible.
Yeah, I think that you just really hit a subject. I had to look up what impact means again, because I was like, what is this? And it's one of the definitions is that it has a strong effect on someone or something. And I think this pandemic has impacted our world as artists. And what does that mean? That means our audience is also impacted. So then what is your role as composers and performers? Change. Something is going to come from this, right? So I think we're living in this very pivotal moment, not just a pandemic, but all the things that are happening right now. And as performers and composers, that is an impact, and the audience is impacted by what's to come. So anyway, now that I looked it up, I felt like I could talk about it.
I am of the mind that I don't know where this comes from, because certainly it's not mine. It came from someone that thought that the arts belongs to the people. And the thing is that we are members of society. We are people as well, that we have the preference of doing something, or that we have dedicated our lives to do something like this, is because, it has been a calling for us. And that is part of the contribution, the same calling that the person that actually may choose, that's his calling, or the person that is actually, cooking for a lot of people, that's that calling. So we are all contributing in a way. And as far as that is concerned, I understand ANDREIA very well, because, as you know, that I come also from another part of the world, and it has been a constant deprivation, not being able to go to my initial place, my native land, and for many circumstances. And now with the pandemic, it just exploded, because I mean, members of my family are in different parts of the world. And it's an incredible situation because it makes us reflect. And the reflection is that, what am I doing? What I have been doing all my life? What I have been doing, you know, with this calling to music when I started as a child and never thought I would be talking to all of you. And one of the things that actually give me a lot of peace is to be able to conjugate with you the same passion. You see, I mean, whether you like it or not, or whether you don't didn't know about this, I mean, you're members of my family. You're members of this thing that is global in me. It's not local anymore, you see. And this is one of the things that you are impacting me. The pieces that I listened today impacted me. They are pieces that are new to me, coming from these composers. I know other pieces, but I didn't know these ones. You performers are impacting me tremendously, because I mean, for you to translate what we do and make it live and actually send it out, you know, like you send a baby out, I mean, that is tremendous. So therefore, all of this is very important, what we're doing. And as I began, we are part of that community that embraces all the communities of the world. And the arts belongs to the people. We are the people that belongs to the arts, and we are contributing not only this century, but I always talk about the fact that whatever we're doing right now will be discussed next century. And this is actually what we're doing. We are actually writing right now the document that is going to actually be discussed then. Who knows what's going to happen with all these videos? You see? So this is a document as well. So anything else to explore before we conclude the program today?
I'll just say thank you, Tania. I've known you for a long time. It's a real pleasure to be a part of this and to meet everyone and to hear this great music. And music is a space for liberation. That's what it's always represented for me. And it's a space that actually, because it's not 3D, it's not physical, no one can take it away from us. So while all these crazy things are going on in the world and we try our best to give people hope and a sense that things can get better, we actually are helping to create an alternative world where we actually exist in freedom as long as the song is playing. So
very beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, seems to me that this is a time now that we are going to say goodbye to our audience and to those that have been with us for more than 1 hour. At this time, I would like to thank you all for joining us and making the inaugural virtual dialogues event such a success. My thanks to the composers and performers for sharing their art and their thoughts so generously. I would like to also take this opportunity to thank our board of directors, institutional funders and donors who support the mission of Composers Now, and to the team that makes Composers Now run: Beatriz Hernandez, David Bridges, Amy Roberts, Rob Froley, Andres Vera León, Yvonne Paredes Burton, Marcello Di Russo, and Austin Shattuck. So until next, love you all, and let's continue to contribute to our society the best way we can.
Oops.
Hello.
Hello.
Gracias.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So, I mean, Andres, can we all be in the